The sensor alarm cut through the silence like a blade. Rebecca Hayes felt her stomach drop as the display lit up with dozens of unknown signatures. Her ship, the Pathfinder, had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel into what should have been empty space. Instead, they had company. Lots of company. Daniel, what am I looking at? Rebecca kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. Lieutenant Daniel Park worked the tactical display with practiced efficiency. His dark eyes narrowed as data streamed across his screens. 47 vessels in a defensive formation. They're not human design. We've got first contact, Captain. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had been reaching into deep space for decades, hoping to find others. Now that hope had arrived, and it looked like a military blockade. Dr. Amara Okonkwo rushed onto the command deck, her research tablet clutched against her chest. Are we really seeing this? Are they really out there? They're out there, Rebecca confirmed. And they're moving toward us. The main view screen flickered to life without anyone touching a control. The image showed a being that made Amara gasp. It looked insect-like, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. The translation software kicked in almost immediately. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Galactic Council space. You will submit to immediate integration protocol. Comply now. Rebecca exchanged glances with her crew. Integration protocol? They had no context for what that meant. This is Captain Rebecca Hayes of the human vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace and seek diplomatic relations. Can you explain what integration protocol means? The insect being tilted its head in a motion that seemed confused. You question the protocol? All species submit. It is law, it is peace. You will allow our medical teams aboard your vessel. You will allow biological scanning. You will accept integration. Ambassador Lian Yu stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. We appreciate your welcome, but we need to understand what you're asking us to accept. What does integration involve? What are the terms? The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the translation software marked as agitation. Terms? There are no terms. There is only compliance. Your species will join the council. Your biology will be recorded. Your aggressive tendencies will be corrected. This is how peace exists in the galaxy. Rebecca felt her blood run cold. Corrected? That sounded like mind control. We decline. We're happy to establish diplomatic channels, but we won't submit to procedures we don't understand. Silence filled the communication channel. The insect being seemed frozen, as if processing something completely outside its experience. Then it spoke again, and this time there was something different in its tone. Fear maybe, or confusion. You refuse integration? No species refuses. Refusal is not possible. We're refusing, Rebecca said firmly. We're willing to talk, to trade, to build friendship, but not at the cost of our freedom. The alien ships moved closer, forming a tighter ring around the Pathfinder. Daniel's tactical display lit up with weapons locks. Dozens of them, Captain, Daniel said quietly. They're targeting us. Rebecca made a decision that would change everything. Activate defensive systems. Don't fire unless fired upon. Prepare for emergency jump. The insect commander appeared again on screen, and now there was no mistaking the emotion. It was anger. You will comply or you will be destroyed. This is final warning. Then you'll have to destroy us, Rebecca replied, because we're not giving up our minds to anyone. The first shots came from 3 council ships simultaneously. Energy weapons that would have torn through most vessels. But the Pathfinder wasn't most vessels. Humanity had spent decades preparing for the possibility that first contact might not be friendly. Shields flared to life, absorbing the impact. Return fire, defensive only, Rebecca ordered. Target their weapon systems, not their hulls. Daniel's fingers flew across his console. The Pathfinder's response was precise and devastating. Human weapons technology, developed through centuries of Earth conflicts, proved frighteningly effective. 3 council ships went dark, their weapon arrays destroyed but their crews unharmed. Jump now, Rebecca commanded. The Pathfinder tore back into faster-than-light travel, leaving the stunned council fleet behind. But Rebecca knew they had just done something unprecedented. They had refused. They had fought back, and they had escaped. Captain, Amara said, her voice shaking. What did we just do? Rebecca stared at the view screen, now showing only the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. We told them no, and I think that's something they've never heard before. Leon pulled up the recorded communication data, analyzing every word the insect commander had said. Integration protocol. Correction of aggressive tendencies. Forced biological scanning. This isn't first contact. This is first conquest. They called it peace, Daniel added, still monitoring for pursuit. But peace doesn't come at gunpoint. Rebecca felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. The Pathfinder had been sent to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. Instead, they had stumbled into something dark. A galactic government that demanded submission as the price of membership. One that had apparently never encountered resistance. We need to get this information back to Earth, Rebecca said. Humanity needs to know what's out here. But more than that, we need to understand what integration really means. Why would any species accept having their aggression corrected? What does that even mean? Amara was already working on her analysis. If I had to guess, some form of neural control. Implants, maybe, or genetic modification. Something that makes species compliant. Then we're looking at a galaxy full of mind-controlled civilizations, Leon said slowly. And they think it's normal. They think it's peace. The ship's long-range sensors suddenly picked up a transmission. It was coded, hidden in background radiation and clearly not meant for the Council. Daniel isolated it and played it through the speakers. A new voice, this one reptilian in nature, spoke quickly and urgently. Human ship. You escaped. First time in 3,000 years. We are broken chain. We resist. We need talk. You in danger. Council coming. Rebecca looked at her crew. They were millions of light years from home, being hunted by a galactic government that demanded submission, and now contacted by some kind of resistance movement. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but they were also the only free species in the galaxy who knew the truth. Send response, Rebecca said. Tell them we'll talk. Tell them we want to understand. And Daniel? Yes, Captain? Keep the weapons hot. Something tells me we're going to need them. The Pathfinder raced through the darkness between stars carrying a crew that had just learned a terrible truth. The galaxy wasn't empty of intelligent life. It was full of it. But somewhere along the way that life had traded freedom for peace, and humanity had just refused to make that trade. Behind them, across dozens of star systems, alarms were sounding. Council stations were receiving reports of the impossible. An unknown species had appeared, refused integration, and escaped. High Arbiter Sulen, a being of ancient authority, received the news in her chamber beneath an ocean world. She had maintained galactic peace for 3 centuries. She had integrated 17 species into the Council's embrace. She had never failed, until now. Find them, she ordered her subordinates. Find this human species. Find their homeworld. They will be integrated. They must be integrated, because if one species can refuse, others will remember they can too, and then the peace we have built will shatter. The hunt had begun, and the galaxy, which had been quiet for 3,000 years, was about to wake up. The message came through again, more insistent this time. Rebecca had been staring at it for 10 minutes, trying to decide if answering would save them or doom them. The broken chain. A resistance group in a galaxy that supposedly had perfect peace. That alone told her everything she needed to know about the Council's version of harmony. What do you think? She asked Leon, who had been analyzing the signal source. Leon pulled up a star map dotted with the transmission's origin points. It's bouncing through 17 different relay stations. Whoever they are, they're good at hiding. Professional-level encryption. They don't want the Council finding them. Which means the Council is actively hunting them, Amara added. She had been cross-referencing everything they had learned. A resistance movement only exists when there's something to resist. And they only hide when the punishment for resistance is severe. Daniel looked up from his tactical station. We have 3 Council patrol groups searching for us. They're spreading out in a search pattern. We have maybe 6 hours before they calculate our probable vectors. Rebecca made her decision. Answer them. Set up a secure channel. Let's hear what the broken chain has to say. The view screen flickered and a figure appeared. Reptilian features with scales that shifted between green and bronze. Large eyes that seemed to hold centuries of sadness. The being spoke carefully as if every word cost something. I am Runner. No other name safe to give. You are in great danger, humans. Greater than you know. We figured that out when they shot at us, Rebecca replied. Tell us about integration. Tell us the truth. Runner looked away from the camera for a moment as if gathering courage. Integration protocol began 3,000 years ago. After the War of Ashes, 50 species fought. Billions died. Entire worlds burned. When it ended, survivors gathered. They said never again. They said, we will create perfect peace. Let me guess, Leon interrupted. They decided the problem was free will. Runner's eyes widened. You understand quickly. Yes, council formed. Scientists developed neural implants. Small, invisible, placed at base of brainstem. They suppress aggression, suppress dissent, suppress questioning. Species that accepted implants first called it voluntary, called it safety. Within generation became mandatory. Within century was automatic at birth. Amara felt sick. An entire galaxy of lobotomized civilizations. Not lobotomized, Runner corrected. Worse, we can think. We can feel. We can dream. But we cannot act against council. Cannot organize. Cannot rebel. Implant activates when we try. Pain first, then paralysis, then death if we persist. 3,000 years galaxy has lived this way. Council calls it peace. I call it prison. Rebecca leaned forward. But you're talking to us. You're part of this broken chain. How? Runner touched the back of his neck and Rebecca saw a scar there. Rough and poorly healed. Implant can be removed. Process is dangerous. Many die trying. Those who survive, we hide. We move constantly. We help others when we can. But we are few. So very few. Council has won. Until yesterday. What happened yesterday? Daniel asked, though he already knew. You happened. Runner said simply. You refused integration. You fought back. You escaped. In 3,000 years, no species has done this. Council Patrol Commander sent priority alert. Reached every council world. Humans exist. Humans resist. Humans won. We didn't win, Rebecca said. We ran. You survived. You kept your minds. That is winning. Runner's voice held something Rebecca hadn't expected. Hope. Message spread beyond official channels. Reached resistance networks. Reached underground groups. Reached those who still dream of freedom. For first time in my life, people are asking questions. What if we can refuse too? What if the peace is a lie? Leon was already seeing the implications. We've become a symbol, just by existing. More than symbol, Runner said urgently. You are proof that council can be defied. That their perfect system has weakness. That another way exists. But this makes you greatest threat council has ever faced. High Arbiter Sulen is mobilizing suppression fleet. Not patrol boats. Capital ships. Hundreds of them. They will find you. They will destroy you. Or they will take you to integration centers and make you examples. Show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse. Rebecca felt the weight of it settling on her. One ship, one crew. And suddenly they represented the last free minds in the galaxy. Can you help us get home? Get this information back to Earth? Runner hesitated. I can provide safe routes through neutral space. Can hide your trail. But Captain Rebecca, you must understand. If you return to Earth, you lead Council straight to your homeworld. They will follow. They will find humanity, and they will not offer choice. They will arrive with integration equipment and enough force to ensure compliance. The bridge went silent. Rebecca looked at her crew. Daniel, who had a wife and 2 daughters on Earth. Amara, whose entire family lived in Lagos. Leon, whose parents ran a small restaurant in Shanghai. All of them had people they loved on their homeworld, and returning there might doom them all. Then we don't go home, Rebecca said quietly. Not yet. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. Not until we can warn Earth properly and give them time to prepare. Captain, Daniel started, but Rebecca cut him off. I know what I'm asking. I know what it costs. But if we lead the Council to Earth now unprepared, we're not saving our families. We're condemning them. We need time. We need information. And we need allies. Runner's eyes showed respect. You think like resistance fighter. But you cannot fight Council alone. Their forces number in millions. Their resources span galaxy. Even with your impressive weapons, you are one ship. Then help us find more, Rebecca said. You said there are others. Underground groups. People who still dream of freedom. Connect us with them. Let's turn this symbol into something real. Runner was quiet for a long moment. You ask for revolution. You know what that means? War, death, suffering on scale you cannot imagine. Council will not release control peacefully. They believe they saved galaxy from itself. They will kill billions to maintain that belief. And if we do nothing? Amara asked. How many billions live as prisoners in their own minds? How many more will be integrated? How many species will be absorbed into this system? At some point, Runner doing nothing becomes its own crime. Runner made a sound that the translation software marked as bitter laughter. I have lived in hiding for 23 years. I have watched friends die trying to remove implants. I have seen Council crush resistance cells across dozen worlds. I had given up hope that anything would change. But then your ship appeared. And you said the one word Council has not heard in 3,000 years. You said no. Is that a yes? Rebecca pressed. Will you help us? Runner nodded slowly. I will help. I will connect you with other broken chain cells. I will provide intelligence on Council movements. I will do whatever I can. But Captain, you must promise me something. What? When war comes, and it will come, you must remember why you fight. Not for conquest. Not for revenge. But for choice. For freedom. For right of every being to control their own mind. Council started with good intentions. They wanted to prevent another war of ashes. They became the very tyrants they feared. Do not make same mistake. Rebecca stood, meeting Runner's eyes through the view screen. We fight so people can choose peace, not have it forced on them. You have my word. Runner transmitted a data package. Safe routes. Resistance contact codes. Council fleet movements. Everything I have. And Captain? Thank you. For reminding Galaxy what courage looks like. The transmission ended. Rebecca looked at the data, then at her crew. They were committed now. No going back. One human ship against a galactic empire. The smart move would be to run, to hide, to survive. But Rebecca hadn't joined the Exploration Corps to make smart moves. Daniel, plot a course using Runner's routes. Amara, start analyzing what we know about these implants. If there's a safe way to remove them, we need to find it. Leanne, start preparing first contact protocols. We're going to need to talk to a lot of different species very quickly. And you, Captain? Leanne asked. Rebecca smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. I'm going to record a message. Everything we've learned. Everything we know. And I'm going to send it to Earth on every frequency we have. They deserve to know what's coming. They deserve time to prepare. And they deserve to make their own choice about what happens next. Across the galaxy in her deep ocean chamber, High Arbiter Sulen reviewed the reports. The human ship had made contact with known resistance elements. The infection was spreading faster than anticipated. Already there were reports of citizens questioning integration. Minor incidents easily contained, but troubling. She gave orders to her fleet commanders. Find the human ship. But more importantly, find their homeworld. Once we integrate their species at the source, the symbol dies. The resistance will fade back into nothing. Peace will be restored. What Sulen didn't know was that her orders were being monitored. That encrypted channels carried her words to dozens of broken chain cells. That for the first time in 3,000 years, the resistance had advance warning of Council movements. The galaxy was waking up. And it was angry. The Council suppression fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 ships representing 40 species, all united under one purpose: capture or kill the human vessel. Restore order. Silence the question that had started spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. Commander Talth watched from his flagship bridge as the human ship appeared on sensors. It sat there in open space, not running, not hiding, just waiting. That confused him more than anything else. Every species, when faced with overwhelming force, either surrendered or fled. These humans did neither. Open a channel, he ordered. His mandibles clicked nervously. He had commanded fleets for 70 years, but this situation felt wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. The human captain appeared on screen. Female by their species standards, young but with old eyes. She looked directly at Talth as if she could see through the camera into his very thoughts. I am High Arbiter Sulen speaking through Commander Talth, he said, the words not his own but transmitted through his implant. You have violated Galactic Council law. You have refused integration. You have conspired with known resistance elements. This cannot stand. You will surrender your vessel immediately, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 minute to comply. Rebecca Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Before you start counting, I want you to know something. Every word you're about to say, every threat you're about to make is being broadcast on open channels across this entire sector. Millions of worlds are watching right now. So choose your next words carefully, High Arbiter. Talth felt Sulen's rage through the implant connection. The Arbiter wasn't used to being challenged. No one challenged the council. No one dared. You think an audience will save you? Sulin's words came through his mouth. You think broadcasting your destruction will inspire resistance? It will inspire fear. It will show the cost of defiance. Maybe, Rebecca agreed. Or maybe it'll show something else. Tell me, High Arbiter, why does peace require neural implants? Why does harmony need mind control? If your system is so perfect, why do you need to force it on people? Talth felt something strange, a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. Doubt. The implant should have suppressed it, should have reinforced his loyalty to the council. But the question had been asked, and his mind couldn't help but process it. The integration saves lives, Sulin responded. Before the protocol, the galaxy burned. Billions died in endless wars. We created peace. We ended suffering. You ended choice, Rebecca countered. You took away the ability to choose peace. That's not peace. That's surrender dressed up in pretty words. Across the fleet, on dozens of bridges, crew members were listening. The broadcast was reaching everywhere. Some ships tried to jam it, but the signal was too strong, too widespread. And in those moments of listening, implants flickered. Not failed, but struggled. Because questioning wasn't aggression. Doubt wasn't rebellion. The implants didn't know how to suppress simple questions. Enough, Sulin said through Talth. You have refused compliance. Fire on the human vessel. All ships open fire, the fleet moved as one. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked toward the Pathfinder. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. And the human ship sat there, shields absorbing the initial barrage. Then it moved. The Pathfinder's defensive systems were designed by species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of not dying in combat. Countermeasures deployed, shields rotated frequencies, and the return fire was surgical in its precision. Rebecca hadn't been idle during the flight here. She had studied the sensor data from their first encounter. She knew council ships had weak points, knew that species that had lived in forced peace for 3,000 years had forgotten how to design true warships. 3 council vessels went dark in the first 30 seconds. Their weapon systems destroyed but life support intact. 5 more lost propulsion. Another 7 found their communications arrays turned into debris, and all of it was being broadcast. We don't want to kill you, Rebecca said, her voice carrying across open channels. We're not here to conquer. We're not here to destroy. We're here to ask a simple question. Do you want to be free? On the bridge of Talth's flagship, something happened that hadn't occurred in 3,000 years. An officer spoke out of turn. Commander, the human ship is targeting only tactical systems. They're avoiding casualties. Why would an enemy show such restraint? Talth felt his implant activate, sending pain through his neural pathways. Questioning orders. Questioning the council. But the officer's words had been heard by the entire bridge crew, and they were all thinking the same thing. All ships continue firing, Talth ordered, though his voice lacked conviction. Overwhelming force. Do not give them time to maneuver. The Pathfinder took hits. Its shields flared and fluctuated. Warning alarms blared across Rebecca's bridge. Daniel worked his console frantically, routing power and managing damage. They couldn't keep this up forever. Captain, we can't fight 300 ships, Daniel said urgently. We need to jump. Not yet, Rebecca replied. She opened the broadcast channel wider, ensuring it reached not just the fleet but beyond. To the planets. To the stations. To the billions watching from across council space. My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm human. My species comes from a world called Earth, and we've just learned something terrible about your galaxy. For 3,000 years you've been told you live in peace. You've been told the integration keeps you safe. You've been told this is the only way. But it's a lie. More council ships fired. The Pathfinder shuddered under the assault. Amara's console sparked, and she jerked her hand back with a cry of pain. Life support was fluctuating. They had minutes left at best. The council maintains control through fear and force, Rebecca continued. They've taken your ability to choose, to question, to disagree. They've made you prisoners in your own minds and called it peace. But peace that isn't chosen isn't peace at all. It's slavery, and you deserve better. On a mining world 3 star systems away, a worker stopped mid-task. The broadcast played on public screens. Around him, others stopped too. Implants should have made them ignore it, made them return to work. But curiosity wasn't aggression. Interest wasn't rebellion. And the implants were designed for a galaxy that never questioned. On a medical station orbiting a gas giant, Doctors watched the human ship take hit after hit, but refused to run. One doctor, old and tired, touched the back of her neck where she knew her implant sat. She had been 10 years old when it was installed. She couldn't remember what it felt like to think without it. On the council homeworld in chambers beneath the ocean, Sulen watched the broadcast with growing horror. Not because the human was winning. The human was clearly losing, but because across dozens of worlds people were watching and wondering. The question had been planted. Do you want to be free? Destroy them, Sulen commanded. Now, before this spreads further. Talth gave the order for focused fire. Every ship in the fleet concentrated on one target. The Pathfinder's shields collapsed under the assault. Hull plating began to fail. One more volley would tear the ship apart. Rebecca looked at her crew. They had known this might be how it ended, one ship against an empire, but they had gotten the message out. They had asked the question. It's been an honor, she said quietly. Then something impossible happened. 5 ships in the council fleet stopped firing. Then 10, then 20. Captains who had been watching, who had been listening, who had felt their implants struggle against simple questions, made a choice. They wouldn't fire on a ship that was fighting for freedom. Talth felt his implant surge with pain as he watched his own fleet fracture. Decades of loyal service. And now he was frozen, unable to give orders, unable to process what was happening. All ships. This is Commander Talth, he heard himself say, though he didn't remember deciding to speak. Cease fire! What are you doing? Sulen screamed through the implant connection. You will continue the attack. That is an order. But Talth reached up and touched the back of his neck. He felt the small lump there. The implant that had guided his thoughts for 70 years. The device that had given him peace and taken his freedom. No, he said simply. I will not. His implant activated at full power. Pain exploded through his nervous system. He collapsed to the deck, convulsing. His crew rushed to help him, but they froze too. Their own implants punishing the desire to help someone who had defied the council. Only the youngest officer, newly integrated just months ago, managed to move. He reached Talth and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He pulled out his sidearm, placed it against Talth's neck, and fired a precise shot. The implant exploded. Talth screamed as neural connections severed. Blood poured from the wound. But when the pain subsided, when his vision cleared, he felt something he hadn't felt in 70 years. His own thoughts. Unfiltered, uncontrolled, free. Medical team to the bridge, the young officer said quietly. And someone find me a doctor who knows how to remove these things safely. Across the fleet, 57 ships broke formation. Their crews had seen what happened, had seen Talth freed, had made their choice. They moved to defensive positions around the Pathfinder, shields raised against their former allies. The galaxy watched. Rebecca stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what she was seeing. Daniel, are you reading this right? Ships are defecting, Daniel confirmed, his voice shaking. Right in the middle of battle. They're protecting us. Leon was already opening communication channels. This is Ambassador Leon Yu of the human vessel Pathfinder. To all ships defending us, we offer alliance, medical assistance, and whatever support we can provide. The response came from 19 different ships simultaneously. We choose freedom. High Arbiter Sulen, deep beneath her ocean, realized she had made a critical error. She had tried to destroy the symbol. Instead, she had created martyrs. Worse, she had shown the galaxy that defection was possible, that the implants could be removed, that the council could be defied. The war she had tried to prevent had just begun. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had been a xenobiologist for 12 years. She had dreamed of cataloging alien species, learning their cultures, understanding their biology. She never imagined she would be performing emergency neurosurgery on a reptilian commander while his ship drifted in hostile space. Hold still, she said, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. Talth lay on the medical bay table, fully conscious because anesthesia might interfere with the procedure. Behind her, 3 other doctors from the defected ships watched and learned. The implant has grown into your brainstem. I have to separate it carefully or you could lose motor function. Just remove it, Talth hissed through his pain. I spent 70 years as a slave to that device. I will take paralysis over that. Amara worked with precision, using tools designed for human surgery adapted on the fly for alien biology. The implant came free in pieces, each extraction causing Talth to convulse. But when it was done, when the last fragment was removed, he lay there breathing hard, tears streaming down his scaled face. "I can think," he whispered. "I can think my own thoughts." I had forgotten what this felt like. Around the medical bay, the other doctors looked at each other. One of them, an amphibious being named Kella, touched her own neck. "Can you remove mine too?" "I can try," Amara said. "But I need to warn you. The procedure is dangerous. These implants have been in place for generations. They've integrated with your nervous systems. Some of you might not survive the removal. Then some of us will die free," Kella replied. "That's better than living as property." Within hours, Amara had performed 17 implant removals. 3 patients died on the table, their nervous systems too dependent on the implants to survive separation. She mourned each loss, but the others understood. They had made their choice knowing the risks. The news of successful removals spread through the defected fleet like electricity. More ships joined them. Crews that had been watching the broadcasts that had seen Talth's liberation made their decisions. The small fleet of 57 became 200, then 500, then 1,000. Rebecca stood on the Pathfinder's bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed their growing coalition. "This is spreading too fast. The Council won't let this continue." She was right. Reports came in from across the galaxy. Council forces were mobilizing, not just to hunt the Pathfinder, but to suppress the awakening happening on dozens of worlds. On the industrial planet of Carvax, workers had begun removing their implants in secret medical facilities. The Council responded by deploying troops to enforce mandatory scanning and reintegration. 3,000 workers died in the crackdown. On the agricultural world of Bennett, farmers who had questioned the integration were rounded up and taken to re-education centers. Most never returned. Those who did came back with blank eyes and compliant smiles, their implants upgraded to more restrictive models. But for every act of suppression, the resistance grew stronger. The broken chain, which had operated in shadows for decades, suddenly found itself coordinating a galaxy-wide movement. Runner, who had spent 23 years hiding, became a voice heard across star systems. "They cannot suppress us all." Runner broadcast on encrypted channels that reached millions. "For 3,000 years they told us the integration was for our own good. But the moment we questioned, they showed their true nature. They are not protectors. They are slavers, and we will not submit." Leon worked day and night establishing diplomatic connections with newly independent worlds. Some had removed their implants successfully and declared independence from the Council. Others were still fighting. Their populations divided between those who wanted freedom and those who feared the chaos it might bring. "Not everyone wants to be free," Leon told Rebecca during a brief rest period. "Some species have known nothing but the integration for so long that the idea of thinking for themselves terrifies them. We're not just fighting the Council. We're fighting 3,000 years of conditioning." "Then we help them understand," Rebecca replied. "We show them that freedom is worth the fear." But the Council was adapting too. High Arbiter Selene, realizing that military force alone was failing, changed tactics. She began broadcasting her own messages, using integrated species to speak on her behalf. "The humans lie," said a representative from the Kelsor species. His implant kept his voice steady, his arguments clear. "They speak of freedom, but what they bring is chaos. Before integration, our worlds burned. We fought wars that killed billions. The Council gave us peace. The Council gave us safety. Would you trade that for the uncertainty of freedom?" The message resonated with many. Entire worlds that had been considering independence pulled back, choosing the familiar comfort of control over the unknown territory of self-determination. The galaxy began to fracture along ideological lines, and where ideology split, violence followed. The first battle of what would later be called the Awakening War happened in orbit of a mining colony. Council forces arrived to suppress a worker uprising. The Resistance fleet, including the Pathfinder, jumped in to defend them. What followed was chaos. Ships that had been allies for centuries fired on each other. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with no clear victor, just wreckage and casualties on both sides. Amara found herself treating wounded from both sides of the conflict. Council soldiers with implants still active, Resistance fighters who had removed theirs. Some of the Council soldiers, when they understood they were being treated by the enemy, couldn't process it. Their implants told them the Resistance were monsters. The medical care they received proved otherwise. One soldier, a young insectoid barely past adolescence, watched as Amara saved his life. When she was done, he asked a question that his implant should have suppressed. "Why help me? I was trying to kill you." "Because you're not my enemy," Amara replied. "Your implant is. You didn't choose to be here. You didn't choose to fight. When you're ready to make your own choices, we'll help you with that too." The soldier said nothing, but Amara saw him touch the back of his neck with a thoughtful expression. Daniel had spent weeks analyzing Council military tactics and found something disturbing. They're not trying to win through force anymore. They're trying to make us look like the aggressors. Every time we defend a world seeking independence, they spin it as an invasion. Every time we help someone remove an implant, they call it forced deintegration. They're fighting a propaganda war, and they're good at it. Rebecca understood the problem. The Council had 3,000 years of credibility. Humanity had been in the galaxy for a few months. Then we need to be better. Every action we take, we document. Every world we help, we let them speak for themselves. We're not conquerors. We're not liberators. We're just the ones who asked a question. But asking questions had consequences. Earth received its first visit from a Council diplomatic mission. Not warships, but ambassadors. They arrived with smiles and offers of trade, technology, and membership in the galactic community. All humanity had to do was accept integration. The transmission of the meeting reached the Pathfinder 3 days after it happened. Rebecca watched as Earth's representatives listened to the Council's pitch. Watched as the ambassadors explained how integration would end war, crime, and suffering on Earth. Watched as they showed footage of peaceful, prosperous Council worlds. And then she watched as Earth's lead negotiator, a woman named Patricia Graham, asked the critical question. What happens if we refuse? The Council ambassador's expression didn't change, but there was a coldness in the response. Then Earth remains isolated, outside the community of civilized species, without access to our technology, our medicine, our protection. Your ship, the Pathfinder, has made many enemies. Those enemies will remember you come from somewhere, and we will not protect those who refuse our help. It was a threat wrapped in diplomatic language. Accept integration or face the consequences. Patricia Graham smiled. Then I guess we'll face the consequences. Because humanity didn't crawl out of caves, survive ice ages, and reach the stars just to surrender our minds at the finish line. You can tell your Council that Earth refuses. Rebecca felt pride and terror in equal measure. Earth had chosen freedom, but that choice had just painted a target on humanity's home. "Captain," Daniel said quietly, "we're receiving reports. Council forces are mobilizing. Not patrol fleets, battle fleets. Hundreds of capital ships. They're forming up in staging areas." "Where are they headed?" Rebecca already knew the answer. Earth, they're going to force integration. And if Earth resists, they'll make an example of the entire planet. The bridge went silent. Everything they had fought for, every world they had helped, every person they had freed, it all came down to this. The Council was going to try to break the symbol of resistance by breaking humanity itself. Talth, who had been recovering from his implant removal, entered the bridge. His movements were still uncertain, his neural pathways relearning how to function without mechanical guidance. But his eyes were clear. "How long before the Council fleet reaches Earth?" 3 weeks, Daniel replied. "Maybe 4 if they're gathering forces from multiple sectors." "Then we have 3 weeks to prepare a defense," Talth said. "I know Council tactics. I know their fleet movements. I know their weaknesses, and I know how to hurt them." Rebecca looked at the former Council commander, now ally in this impossible war. "Can we win?" Talth was quiet for a moment. "Militarily? No, their numbers are too great. But wars are not won by numbers alone. They are won by will, by belief, by the willingness to sacrifice everything for what matters. The Council has ships and weapons, but we have something they can't create with implants. We have people who chose to be here, who chose to fight, who chose freedom. Then let's make sure their choice matters," Rebecca said. "Send word to every resistance cell, every freed world, every ship in our fleet. Tell them the fight is coming to Earth. Tell them this is where we make our stand. Tell them this is where we prove that freedom is worth fighting for." Across the galaxy, the message spread. The Council was coming. The final battle was approaching. And every being who had removed their implant, who had chosen to think for themselves, who had dared to imagine a galaxy without chains, prepared to defend the world that had reminded them what freedom looked like. High Arbiter Sulan reviewed her forces with satisfaction. Over 2,000 capital ships, support vessels numbering in the tens of thousands, enough firepower to reduce Earth to asteroid dust. The humans would learn what every other species had learned. The Council's peace was inevitable. Resistance was futile. But as her fleet prepared to depart, reports came in. Ships defecting. Crews removing implants. Captains refusing orders. The infection was spreading even within her own forces. She had 3,000 years of authority behind her. But the humans had given the galaxy something more powerful than authority. They had given it a choice. Earth's orbital defense grid had been designed to stop asteroids and debris. It was never meant to face a fleet of 2,000 warships emerging from faster-than-light travel, like a plague of metal insects. But there it was, filling the sensor screens, blotting out the stars. Patricia Graham stood in the command center beneath Geneva, watching the tactical display with a calm she didn't feel. Around her, military commanders from every nation coordinated defenses that everyone knew wouldn't be enough. Earth had weapons. Earth had ships. But Earth had been in space for barely 2 centuries while the Council had been conquering galaxies for 3,000 years. How long until they're in firing range? She asked. 40 minutes, replied Admiral Chen, commander of Earth's combined space forces. We have 300 ships. They have 2,000. The math isn't in our favor. The math wasn't in favor of anyone who ever fought for freedom, Patricia replied. We fight anyway. Above Earth, the defense fleet formed up. Ships from a dozen nations. Differences set aside because there was only one nation that mattered now. Humanity. And humanity had made its choice. The Pathfinder sat at the center of the formation, no longer alone. Around it flew the Resistance fleet, 700 ships crewed by beings from 50 different species, all of whom had removed their implants, all of whom had chosen to be here, former Council soldiers fighting beside the humans they had been sent to capture. It was the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. Rebecca stood on her bridge looking at the Council fleet on approach. This was it. Everything had led to this moment. One ship refusing integration had sparked a revolution. Now that revolution would either succeed or be crushed so completely that no one would dare resist again. Captain, Daniel said, his voice tight. The Council fleet is broadcasting. The screen flickered and High Arbiter Sulan appeared. She looked older than her years, burdened by the weight of maintaining an empire built on lies. When she spoke, her voice carried across every channel, reaching not just Earth but the billions watching from across the galaxy. Humanity, you have been offered a place in the galactic community. You have been offered peace, prosperity, and protection. You have refused. You have instead chosen chaos. You have corrupted loyal Council species, turned them against order, and spread the poison of dissent across civilized space. This cannot stand. You will submit to integration or you will be eliminated. You have until I finish speaking to surrender. Choose wisely. Patricia Graham didn't hesitate. She opened Earth's broadcast channel, her message reaching the same audience. High Arbiter, you offer us peace at the cost of our minds. You offer us prosperity as prisoners. You offer us protection from dangers you yourself present. We choose differently. We choose to think for ourselves. We choose to make our own mistakes. We choose to be free, and we will defend that choice with everything we have. Sulan's expression didn't change. Then you choose extinction. All ships commence attack. Make it quick. Make it complete. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who refuse order. The Council fleet advanced. Weapon systems powered up. Launch tubes opened. 2,000 ships moved as one coordinated mass. 3 millennia of military experience guiding every maneuver. Then something happened that Sulan hadn't anticipated. 300 ships in her fleet stopped advancing. Their crews, who had been watching the standoff, who had been processing everything they had seen and heard, made a choice. Implants could suppress many things, but they couldn't suppress everything. And doubt once planted grew like weeds through concrete. This is Captain Voss of the Council ship Infinite Horizon. A voice broadcast on open channels. I have served the Council for 50 years. I believed in the integration. I believed it kept us safe. But I've watched the humans fight. I've watched them defend others. I've watched them offer mercy to their enemies. And I've asked myself a question. What are we protecting? Order or just obedience? Voss's implant activated, sending pain through his neural system. His crew watched their captain convulse. And they made a decision. The ship's medical officer rushed forward with a surgical tool and removed the implant in one swift, brutal cut. Voss screamed. Blood poured. But when it was done, he was free. All ships, this is Voss. I'm defecting. Join me if you dare to think for yourself. The Council fleet fractured. Not all of it. Not even most of it. But enough. 500 ships broke formation, moving to join the defenders. Some crews had to fight each other first. Those who wanted freedom against those who clung to order. Bridges became battlegrounds. Ships tore themselves apart from the inside. Sulin watched her carefully coordinated assault collapse into chaos. All loyal forces engage. Destroy the defectors first. They are the greater threat. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. Not Council against Resistance, but Council against itself. Ships that had fought together for centuries turned weapons on each other. The void filled with fire and debris. The Pathfinder moved through the chaos, Rebecca directing her crew with precision born from months of running and fighting. They targeted Council ships' weapon systems, still trying to minimize casualties even as the battle raged. But this wasn't about killing. It was about surviving long enough for people to choose. Talth commanded a section of the Resistance fleet with expertise that came from decades of Council military training. He knew their tactics because he had developed many of them. He knew their weaknesses because he had once overlooked them, and he used that knowledge to devastating effect. Focus fire on their command carriers he broadcast to Allied ships. Their fleet coordination depends on those vessels. Take them offline and they lose cohesion. The strategy worked. 3 command carriers went dark, their systems overloaded by coordinated strikes. Without central coordination, the Council fleet's movements became fragmented. Individual ship commanders had to make their own decisions. And for species who had lived with implants for generations, independent thinking didn't come easily. On Earth, Patricia Graham watched the battle unfold in orbit. The defense grid was firing, adding its strength to the Resistance fleet. Human ships that had never been tested in combat proved their worth, their designs influenced by centuries of warfare on Earth, bringing new tactics to a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight. But the Council still had numbers. For every ship that defected, 3 remained loyal. The tide slowly turned against the defenders. Ships were lost. People died. The Resistance fleet, cobbled together from defectors and volunteers, began to buckle under the assault. "Captain, we can't hold," Daniel reported, his console showing critical damage across the Allied forces. "We've lost 200 ships. Earth's orbital stations are taking hits. We need to fall back." "Fall back where?" Rebecca asked. "This is humanity's home, there's nowhere else to go." Amara looked up from her medical station, where she was coordinating triage for the wounded. "Maybe we don't need to win. Maybe we just need to last long enough." "Long enough for what?" Daniel demanded. "For them to see," Amara replied, pointing at the display showing the battle. "This isn't just being watched by Earth and the Council. It's being broadcast to every world in the galaxy. They're watching the Council throw everything they have at one planet that just wants to be free. They're watching Resistance fighters die defending that freedom. Every minute we survive, every ship that defects, every crew that chooses to remove their implants, that's a victory the Council can't undo." She was right. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, billions watched the battle for Earth. They watched humans and aliens fight side by side, watched former Council ships turn their weapons on their own fleet, watched the High Arbiter's perfect order collapse into chaos, and they started asking questions. On the industrial world of Carvax, where workers had been suppressed just weeks ago, a revolution erupted. Workers stormed the integration facilities and destroyed the implant manufacturing plants. Council forces responded, but they found themselves facing millions of angry beings who had decided freedom was worth dying for. On the agricultural world of Bennett, farmers who had been cowed into submission rose up. They might not have warships, but they had numbers. They surrounded Council garrison buildings and refused to leave. When troops tried to disperse them, they stood firm. Implants activated, causing pain. Many died from neural overload. But for everyone who fell, 3 more took their place. A dozen worlds declared independence in the span of an hour, then 50, then 100. The Council, which had maintained control for 3,000 years, suddenly found itself fighting on hundreds of fronts simultaneously. and they didn't have enough forces to suppress them all. High Arbiter Sulan watched her empire fracture in real time. Reports flooded in. Rebellions, defections, uprisings, all sparked by one species that had refused to submit. All because the humans had asked a simple question and been willing to die defending the answer. All forces withdraw from Earth, she commanded. We need to contain the core worlds. Let the humans have their victory. We'll deal with them after we restore order. But her own bridge crew hesitated. Some touched the backs of their necks, feeling the implants there. Some looked at each other, wondering if following this order was right. And Sulan realized the terrible truth. She had already lost. Not because the battle for Earth was going poorly, though it was, but because the idea of resistance had spread beyond her ability to contain. She could destroy Earth. She could kill every human. But she couldn't kill the question they had asked. Do you want to be free? Commander Talrith, Sulan said to her security chief. Place me under arrest. Talrith, who had served Sulan for 90 years, stared at her in confusion. What? You heard me. I am surrendering. I am ending this. Because if we continue, if we destroy Earth, we turn them into martyrs. We make them symbols that can never be destroyed. Better to negotiate. Better to adapt. Better to survive. Talrith approached slowly, uncertain. His implant told him to obey the High Arbiter, but his implant also told him to maintain order. And right now those two directives contradicted each other. He chose to obey Sulan. He placed her in restraints, and he broadcast the surrender to all Council forces. This is Commander Talrith of the Council flagship. High Arbiter Sulan has ordered all forces to cease fire and withdraw. The battle for Earth is over. The firing stopped. Not everywhere, and not all at once. Some ships fought on, their crews unable to process the order. Some continued fighting because their implants wouldn't let them stop, but gradually over the course of an hour, the battle wound down. Earth had survived. Rebecca stood on her bridge, barely able to believe what she was seeing. They're withdrawing. They're actually withdrawing. We won, Daniel said, his voice filled with disbelief. We survived, Rebecca corrected. The war isn't over, but today, we survived. And sometimes that's enough. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Newly independent worlds offering alliance. Resistance cells broadcasting victory. Freed populations celebrating in streets and stations. The galactic map, which had been Uniform Council blue for 3,000 years, now looked like a patchwork of different colors. Some worlds remained Council territory. Others declared independence. Many fell into chaos as different factions fought for control. It was messy. It was complicated. It was freedom. Patricia Graham broadcast from Earth, her message reaching the galaxy. To all who fought for us today, thank you. To all who are fighting for freedom on your own worlds, we stand with you. To the Council forces who chose to defect, you are welcome here. And to High Arbiter Sulan, we accept your surrender. But we will not accept a return to the old ways. The galaxy has changed. It's time you changed with it. Leon was already drafting proposals for a new galactic organization. One based on voluntary membership, one that respected each species' right to self-determination. It would be difficult. There would be setbacks. Some species would choose to return to integration, preferring its certainty to freedom's chaos, but the choice would be theirs. As the last Council ships jumped away from Earth, as the Resistance fleet began recovery operations and rescue missions, Rebecca recorded a log entry. Today we fought the largest battle in human history. We faced annihilation and survived. But we didn't survive alone. Beings from 50 different species chose to stand with us. Some died for that choice. Their sacrifice means we cannot waste this victory. We have to build something better, something that honors their courage. The galaxy is awake now. Let's make sure it stays that way. 6 months after the battle for Earth, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Maybe 200 worlds remained under its control, mostly those whose populations had known nothing but integration for so long that the concept of independent thought terrified them. That was their choice, and the new galactic community respected it. Rebecca walked through the halls of Unity Station, a massive new construct built in neutral space. It had been created as a meeting ground, a place where representatives from hundreds of worlds could gather without fear. The architecture was a strange blend of styles, each species contributing their own aesthetic. Some humans found it chaotic. Rebecca found it beautiful. She passed a group of young beings, mixed species, chattering excitedly in multiple languages. Most wore small devices on their collars that translated in real time, technology shared freely by a dozen species working together. One of them, a reptilian child, noticed Rebecca and pulled away from the group. "Are you Captain Hayes?" the child asked in accented but clear English. "I am," Rebecca confirmed, kneeling to be at eye level. "My parent says you started the awakening, that you're a hero." Rebecca smiled sadly. "I'm not a hero. I just asked a question. Your parents are the heroes. They chose to answer it, even when it was dangerous." The child considered this, then reached up and touched the back of Rebecca's hand with small claws. "Thank you for asking." The group moved on and Rebecca continued to the assembly hall. It was time for another session, another day of trying to build something functional from the chaos of freedom. The representatives gathered from across known space, each world sending whoever they wanted to send. Some sent diplomats, some sent workers. One world sent a poet. It was messy and inefficient and completely voluntary. Leon stood at the central podium, guiding the discussion with patience learned over months of similar sessions. Today's topic was trade agreements. Boring, practical, necessary. The kind of thing that the Council had mandated for 3,000 years. Now every world had to negotiate individually, and it was taking forever. "The Carvax delegation proposes a resource-sharing agreement," Leon announced. "They offer industrial capacity in exchange for agricultural products from the Bennett Collective. The terms are outlined in Document 47. A representative from Bennett, a farmer still uncomfortable in diplomatic settings, raised his hand. "What happens if we disagree with the terms? In the old days, Council just told us what to do." "Then we negotiate," Leon replied. "We discuss, we find compromise, or we don't make an agreement. That's your choice." "But what if we need what they're offering?" another representative asked. "What if we can't afford to walk away?" "Then you negotiate harder," Leon said with a smile. "Welcome to diplomacy. It's frustrating, time-consuming, and absolutely essential, because the alternative is going back to having someone else make these decisions for you." The debate continued for hours. Rebecca watched from the gallery, remembering the neat efficiency of Council rule. Everything had run smoothly because no one was allowed to disagree. Now everything was complicated because everyone could disagree. It was progress disguised as chaos. After the session, Rebecca found Talth in one of the station's observation decks. The former Council commander spent a lot of time here, staring out at the stars. He had aged in the past 6 months, the weight of freedom heavier than the burden of obedience had ever been. "How are you adjusting?" Rebecca asked, standing beside him. "I'm not sure I am," Talth admitted. "For 70 years my thoughts were guided. My decisions were filtered. I knew my purpose. Now I have to decide everything for myself, and I'm not sure I'm making good choices." "Nobody is sure they're making good choices," Rebecca said. "That's what being free means. The right to succeed, the right to fail, the right to doubt yourself at 3 in the morning. Talth's mandibles clicked, and what Rebecca had learned was amusement. Humans have a gift for making uncertainty sound appealing. We've had a lot of practice. Earth has never known the kind of unity the Council enforced. We've been arguing with each other since we figured out language. It's exhausting and frustrating, and it's made us who we are." "And who are you?" Talth asked. Rebecca thought about it. "Stubborn, mostly. We don't like being told what to do, even when what we're told is objectively better for us. There's something in human nature that rebels against external control. Maybe it's a flaw, maybe it's our greatest strength, but it's definitely what made us question the Council when everyone else accepted it." Amara joined them. looking tired but satisfied. She had been working with medical teams across the galaxy, developing safer procedures for implant removal. The death rate had dropped from 30% to under 5%. Every life saved mattered, but she still mourned the ones lost. Good news, she announced. The Zellian species has developed a genetic therapy that prevents implants from integrating with neural tissue. If we can get it distributed to Council-controlled worlds, the next generation will be born free. Will the Council allow that? Talth asked. They don't have much choice, Amara replied. We're distributing it through underground networks. By the time Council leadership realizes what's happening, millions of children will have received the treatment. They can suppress adults, but they can't suppress a generation that grows up knowing freedom from birth. Rebecca felt hope at that. The awakening hadn't been a single event. It was an ongoing process, one that would take decades to complete. But it was happening. World by world, person by person, the galaxy was learning what it meant to choose. Daniel approached with a datapad, his expression serious. Captain, we've got a situation developing near the Council's core territories. A newly independent world is being blockaded by Council forces. They're not attacking, but they're preventing ships from leaving or entering. It's a slow-motion siege, Rebecca sighed. She had hoped they were past this, but she knew better. Change came with resistance. The Council wouldn't give up its remaining territory without fighting for it. What's the world? Talos. Population 4 billion. They declared independence 3 months ago. The Council is trying to starve them back into submission. That's a war crime, Leon said, having joined the group. We need to respond, do we? Rebecca asked. I mean, do we have the right? We're not the galaxy's police force. We're not the new Council. If we start intervening every time there's a conflict, where does it stop? The question hung in the air. It was one they had been wrestling with for months. The resistance fleet still existed, now reorganized as a voluntary defense force. But what was their purpose? Protecting independence? Enforcing it? And who decided when intervention was necessary? I think we should vote on it, Amara suggested. Send a message to all member worlds. Ask them if they support intervention. Let them decide collectively. That could take weeks, Daniel objected. The people of Talos might not have weeks. Then they'll learn to decide faster, Leon said. Democracy is slow. It's messy. But it's also the only way to ensure we don't become the very thing we fought against. Rebecca made a decision. We'll do both. Send ships to Talos to deliver humanitarian aid. Food, medicine, supplies. We won't break the blockade. But we'll make sure the people survive while the vote is conducted. And if the Council tries to stop us, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The plan was executed within hours. 20 ships crewed by volunteers from a dozen species, loaded with supplies and headed for Talos. The Council fleet blockading the world faced a choice. Let the aid through or fire on humanitarian vessels. They chose to let it through, not out of mercy but out of pragmatism. The galaxy was watching. Every action was broadcast, analyzed, debated. The Council had learned that military victories could be propaganda defeats. High Arbiter Sulen, now under what the new assembly called protective custody, watched the Talos situation from her quarters on Unity Station. She was allowed visitors, allowed to watch broadcasts, allowed to participate in discussions if she wished. It was a strange kind of imprisonment, one that gave her all the freedom she had spent 3,000 years denying others. Rebecca visited her sometimes, not out of friendship but out of curiosity. What did a deposed dictator think about the chaos she had tried to prevent? You created this mess, Sulen said during one visit, gesturing at a display showing the complicated galactic political situation. 100 worlds arguing over trade, border disputes between former Council members, some planets descending into civil war as factions fight for control. This is what you wanted? It's what they wanted, Rebecca corrected. I just asked if they were happy with what they had. Turns out most weren't, but you're right. It is messy. It's complicated. It's frustrating. And it's theirs. Their mess. Their complications. Their choices. People aren't good at making choices, Sulen insisted. They're impulsive, emotional. They make decisions that harm themselves and others. The integration removed those flaws, created stability. At what cost? Rebecca asked. You created stability by removing everything that makes life worth living. Passion, creativity, the ability to change your mind. Yes, people make bad choices, but they also make amazing ones. and you can't have one without the other. Selene was quiet for a long moment. I believed I was helping. I truly believed the integration was necessary. I know you did, Rebecca said. That's what makes it complicated. You weren't a cartoon villain. You were someone who saw a problem and tried to solve it. You just chose a solution that violated everything that makes beings free, and now you have to live with that. Will I be executed? Selene asked. Many call for it. No, Rebecca replied. The assembly voted. You'll remain in custody, but you'll be treated humanely, because we're trying to build something better than what came before. That means showing mercy even when it's hard, but it also means you don't get to return to power. Your time is over. The galaxy is moving on. Rebecca left Selene to her thoughts and returned to the observation deck. She looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that was home to trillions of beings, all of them trying to figure out what freedom meant. Runner found her there. The resistance leader had become a prominent voice in the new assembly, representing worlds that were still removing implants and learning to govern themselves. He looked older too, the weight of responsibility aging him faster than time alone could. I wanted to thank you, Runner said, for everything. You don't need to thank me, Rebecca replied. You were fighting long before I arrived. Yes, but we were losing. We were scattered, afraid, barely surviving. You gave us hope. You gave us proof that resistance was possible. That changed everything. What will you do now? Rebecca asked. The broken chain doesn't need to hide anymore. Runner laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling. No, but the galaxy needs guides. People who remember what it was like to be controlled. Who can help others learn to be free. I think that's my purpose now. Not to fight, but to teach. That sounds like a good purpose, Rebecca agreed. Daniel called from across the deck. Captain, you're going to want to see this. Rebecca followed him to a display showing a news broadcast. It was from a council world, one of the core territories that had remained loyal. But the images showed something unexpected. Peaceful protests. Citizens holding signs asking for the right to remove their implants. Council security forces standing by, uncertain. Their own implants struggling with orders that felt wrong. It's spreading to their core worlds, Daniel said. Even where the council still has control, people are questioning. The awakening isn't stopping. Rebecca watched the protests and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for a quick resolution or an easy path forward, but hope that the change they had started would continue. That the question they had asked would keep being asked. That the galaxy would keep moving toward something better. The Pathfinder sat in dock at Unity Station being refitted and repaired. Its mission was over. The exploration vessel had become a warship, then a symbol, then a legend. Now it was just a ship again, waiting for its next purpose. Rebecca had been offered a dozen positions. Admiral of the Defense Fleet, Ambassador to the Council Territories, Governor of Earth's expanding sphere of influence. She had turned them all down, because the Pathfinder's original mission had never been completed. They were supposed to be exploring, learning, discovering new worlds. I'm taking her out, Rebecca told her crew during a meeting. Back to what we were supposed to be doing. The galaxy is awake now. It doesn't need us to hold its hand. It needs to find its own way. But there are still unexplored regions out there. Still species we haven't met. Still questions we haven't asked. Some of us want to stay, Amara admitted. The medical work here is important. I can do more good training doctors than flying around space. Then stay, Rebecca said. No one is required to come. This isn't the council. You choose your own path. In the end, half the crew stayed. Half decided to continue exploring. New crew members joined. Beings from a dozen species who wanted to see what else was out there. The Pathfinder became truly diverse, a floating example of what cooperation could achieve. The day they departed Unity Station, hundreds of ships formed an honor escort. Vessels from Earth, from freed council worlds, from species that had just learned to build spacecraft. They accompanied the Pathfinder to the edge of known space, then one by one turned back. Rebecca stood on her bridge looking at the unexplored regions ahead. Behind them, the galaxy they had changed continued its messy, complicated, beautiful journey toward freedom. Ahead lay the unknown, full of possibilities and dangers and questions not yet asked. So, Daniel said from his station, "Where to, Captain?" Rebecca smiled. "Somewhere no one has been before. Somewhere we can ask new questions. And maybe, Just maybe somewhere we can find beings who already know how to be free and can teach us something about it. The Pathfinder jumped to faster-than-light travel, disappearing into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the single human ship that had appeared and ignited war across the galaxy left as it had arrived. Quietly, without fanfare, just people trying to do the right thing, but the changes they sparked would ripple through history for generations to come. On Earth, children learned about the awakening in schools, about the ship that had refused to submit, about the people who chose freedom over safety, about the galaxy that learned to think for itself. On Unity Station, the Assembly continued its work, arguing, debating, compromising, failing, trying again, building something imperfect but genuine, creating systems that respected choice even when choice led to chaos. On Council Worlds, the remaining integration centers slowly emptied as more people chose removal. Some died in the process, many more lived, and those who lived taught their children that freedom was worth dying for, but better still, worth living for. And on the Pathfinder, racing toward unknown stars, Rebecca recorded a final log entry. When we left Earth, we were looking for life in the universe. We found it, but we also found something we weren't expecting. We found a galaxy that had forgotten how to live. We reminded them, not because we were special, not because humans have all the answers, but because we were willing to ask uncomfortable questions and live with the messy answers. I don't know what we'll find out here in unexplored space. Maybe more civilizations that need awakening. Maybe some that will teach us new lessons about freedom. Maybe just empty planets and ancient ruins. But whatever we find, we'll face it as free beings making our own choices. And that's worth every risk we'll take. The galaxy turned. Stars burned. Civilizations rose and fell. And somewhere in the darkness, one small ship carried the stubborn insistence that thinking for yourself was worth fighting for. The war had ended. The real work of building peace, the kind that came from choice rather than control, had just begun. It would take centuries. It would be hard. There would be setbacks and failures, but the galaxy was free to make those mistakes now, and that made all the difference.